RainierAvenueRadio.world.
Have you ever went over a friend's house to eat and the food just ain't no good?
And welcome to our live studio audience for another exciting edition of Did You Know? And here we go with round one. Did you know?
The COVID vaccine is free and easy to get. You don't need insurance or an appointment to get your vaccine. Vaccines are available at many locations near you.
And now we're going to double the value. Did you know?
The COVID-19 vaccine is always free of cost. You can visit pharmacies, community health centers, and other health providers in your neighborhood.
And now for the lightning round. Did you know?
The Delta variant of COVID is a mutation that has health experts worried because it's twice as contagious.
Then for our finale. Did you know?
The best way to protect yourself from the COVID Delta variant is to get fully vaccinated. Get your vaccine today.
Find out more at kingcounty.gov/vaccine. Did you know?
The beat of the Fox with nastiness is back on K-Fox Night Beat.
Yo, what's the deal? It's the legendary Hall of Fame DJ Mixmaster Ice from UTFO.
What's up? Who do you think this is? This is Sir Mix-a-Lot.
And this is Terry Lewis.
And I'm Grand Mixer GMS.
What's up, y'all? This is DJ Third Degree.
This is JJ Hudson from the High Children family.
Sunday nights from 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. It's K-Fox Night Beat with DJ Nastiness.
Bringing back the memories.
Bringing back the memories.
Bringing Seattle's hottest music.
Bringing Seattle's hottest music. RainierAvenueRadio.world.
That's my noise. Peace.
Hey, Buford, why are you kicking that old CD player?
Because I can't hear the radio.
Can't hear the radio? Let me help you.
Hey, you two, quit beating up that outdated audio equipment. You can't hear the radio on a CD player.
You can.
No, you can't, you adorable simpletons. But you can hear some great radio on the Rainier Avenue Radio App. It's brand new, it's free, and it's available for Android and iPhone. In fact, you can download the Rainier Avenue Radio App right now from the Google Play Store or the iPhone App Store.
I'm going to go give me a smartphone right now.
I'm just going to put a graduation cap on my rotary phone. You two have very significant personal issues. Get the Rainier Avenue Radio.world app today.
The Waterfront Block Party 2022, hosted by Friends of the Waterfront Seattle, is coming up Saturday, July 9th at Pier 62 from 4 to 8 p.m. It's free and all ages. Celebrate the arrival of summer at Pier 62 with your waterfront neighbors, featuring free live music, dance, parades, food trucks, a beer garden. Come on to Pier 62 and celebrate the summer at the Waterfront Block Party, July 9th, with friends, family, and the community.
This is your Rainier Avenue Radio.world community update on free online resources through Seattle Public Library. You can do consumer research, take a free online technology class, read newspapers from major cities, and more. There are resources for students of any age, including lifelong learning, student research, and test preparation tools. Access online resources with your library card anywhere with an internet connection at spl.org/online-resources.
Rainier Avenue Radio, your community radio station will provide you with more information. Rainier Avenue Radio.
Welcome to Rainier Avenue Radio. This is Afternoons with Monique, recording live in Seattle, Washington, every Thursday at 1 p.m.
Good afternoon, Seattle. This is Monique from Afternoons with Monique, and you are on Rainier Avenue Radio. Today, we have the first 1 hour, 100 episodes of Afternoons with Monique. Over the last 2 years, you've been with me every Thursday afternoon at 1 p.m., and now we have shifted that time to until 3 p.m. So today is the first of those 1 hours going forward. I have the pleasure and the honor to welcome to my show an honorable, diligent, and powerful person that made decisions for our state. Justice Mary Yu was appointed to the Washington Supreme Court on May 16, 2014, and subsequently elected in 2014 and 2016. Justice Yu joined the Supreme Court after more than 14 years as an accomplished trial court judge in King County Superior Court, where she presided over a wide variety of criminal, civil, and juvenile cases, and presided over hundreds of adoptions and other family law matters. Without further ado, please welcome to Afternoons with Monique, Justice Mary Yu.
Good afternoon, Monique. And first, let me congratulate you on 100 shows. That's a big accomplishment. And thank you for the honor of allowing me to join you today.
Well, we have a whole hour ahead of us, so I have the luxury of interviewing you in more depth than most of my other guests. So I would love to get to know you a little bit, your background, your schooling, how you make decisions to become where you are today on the Washington State Supreme Court. And so let's start with your background, a little bit about where you're from and your family, please.
Sure. Well, I grew up on the south side of Chicago to parents who were immigrants. My mother came from Mexico, my father came from China, and they met in Chicago. And my father worked in a factory all of his life. And so I'm proud to be a child of working class immigrants. So we grew up on the south side. I stayed in Chicago until I was an adult and then later moved to Seattle. So Chicago still is a place where I would say my family roots are.
Very good. And when did you decide that the law was your calling? I mean, I know you studied theology in your early years, undergrad and graduate school. And as I was reading your biography and also on public channels like such as Wikipedia, I understand that you came from a Catholic background and have studied in depth. So you're very knowledgeable about religions. Tell us a little bit about that background where, you explore religions substantially, academically also.
Yes, thank you for that question. I was raised as a Catholic because my mother was Mexican. She was a very devout Catholic. And when my father married her, he had made a commitment that if they had children, they would be raised in a Catholic school. And so we always went to church every Sunday. We were enrolled in Catholic school. And so that was a very much a part of my identity growing up. As I went into high school and then later into college, I so wanted to be like the people who taught me, right? I wanted to be like the good nuns who provided an education. I wanted to do good things. I wanted to participate in the church in some way. And so I got a job with the Catholic Church right after graduating from college. And it was working in an office that the church had just started on economic justice. So it was a peace and justice. It was trying to do education in the Catholic community and what it meant to be a Catholic in the world, right? So it's not just feeding people, but it's asking about the systemic questions of why is there poverty? Why is there racism? So I had worked for the church for 10 years doing that kind of community organizing. And it was wonderful. It was remarkable. We spent a lot of time educating people in parishes. But I would say after 10 years, it became clear to me that I needed some new tools because we were trying to convert people to a new way of thinking by appealing to their religious faith, appealing to their hearts. And I have to admit that after doing that for 10 years, I wanted other tools. And that's what drew me to the law, because the law doesn't ask you, what is your heart? What do you think? The law makes you do right things. And in Chicago, we had the particular problem of people not wanting to sell their homes to Black families. No matter how much we told them that was wrong, it didn't matter to these individuals. And what the law does, right, the law provides a different remedy. Is people don't have to change their heart or their mind, but the law will allow a lawsuit to be filed to force these people to do the right thing, to not discriminate. So that's what drew me to the law. Is it's an opportunity to do good things using other tools.
That's wonderful. So you went to college in Chicago, is that right? And you stayed in Chicago past until graduate school, which is when I believe you went to Yale. Harvard. Am I correct? I'm sorry.
I went to Mundelein of Loyola. So Loyola University.
Right.
Purchased Mundelein College, and the degree is from Loyola.
That's right. And you went to law school at the University of Notre Dame. My apologies. And so at the law school, well, let me go back a little bit. Your decision to go into law was significantly impacted because of the situation with Black discrimination, with the housing situation in Chicago. Is that correct?
Right, that's one example. There are many others as we were looking at a variety of different social issues, but that's the one that really becomes very pointed, right? It was the real issue in Chicago at the time.
Right. So being a student of theology, let me ask you, how does that affect your decision, or does it affect some of your decisions on the Washington State Supreme Court?
You know, Monique, it does affect me. And that is, I don't bring religion in a traditional way to my work. So I don't say that we should decide this case because the Catholic Church says this or because this doctrine says this. But who I am as a person has been shaped and formed by my religious values. Right? The Catholic Church has a very rich social justice tradition, and it's out of that training and teaching and learning that I really formed a view about what it means to be a responsible person in society. Right? How is it that we care for others? How is it that we provide for those with the least amount of resources? All of those values, they come from a religious perspective. But I don't sit at the table with the other justices and try to indoctrinate, or I don't bring the doctrine into my decision making. I bring the values, and the values came from my faith.
Now, if you did not study law and you didn't finish law school, or if you had to choose a different profession, what would it be?
Wow, gosh, that's such a great question. I don't know, I think if I didn't choose the law, maybe I would have been in retail or sales.
Right.
I'm not quite sure. That's a great question. I haven't thought about it.
It's a totally hypothetical one. I mean, you are so deep with the law, and you have risen to the top in Washington State in terms of decision making. You have to study in depth the law of our state in order to make important decisions. So it's hard to imagine what else could you be doing that would be so substantial and meaningful. So let me ask you, who was your first professional role model?
My first professional role model was the priest that I worked with in the Archdiocese. And it's because when I came out of college, I didn't have the training to be a public speaker. I didn't have the level of confidence to get up in a room full of 300 people and paint a vision of social justice. And this priest, his name was Father Kane, he is now a bishop. He literally taught me how to give a speech. He encouraged me to get up and to speak and to run meetings. And I would say he was probably the person who had a significant influence in my life in terms of enabling me to see that I could accomplish something positive. He believed in me when I didn't believe in him. And he taught me a lot of skills that today I utilize every single day.
And this was when you were in your early or mid-20s, when you were working for the Archdiocese?
Yes, that's correct.
And who did you clerk for before you become the superior. Well, before you became before you became a Supreme Court justice, you went through a period where for 12 years, I believe, you were a Superior Court judge. Did you ever clerk for any Supreme or appellate judges before you became a jurist?
No, I did not. Right after I graduated from law school, I went to work for the King County Prosecutor's Office. And it's because I was very drawn to trial practice. When I was in law school, I was on a team that competed in trial practice. And for some reason, I just got it in my mind how much fun it would be to be standing in front of a jury. And I have to just say, Monique, it was really the relationships in terms of the alumni network that really brought me to the prosecutor's office. It wasn't not an ideology or anything more. It was, I knew people there and they were encouraging me and they brought me into the office. And, now that we talk about the office, I have to say the second most influential person was Norm Mailing, who was the elected prosecutor at the time. Right. And I remember being very impressed when I sat down and interviewed for the job, is he just said to me, I want you to remember something. He says, we don't prosecute cases in order to just win cases. We are trying to do justice. Every case is about doing justice, and that's what our job is. It's not about winning. It's about trying to secure justice. And that stuck with me because it was more than you might see at the surface level, right? And I would say that Norm taught me a great deal about living and life and being thoughtful.
I'm going to write down this one for a later part of the show to ask you to further that thought because it belonged to the work that you are currently doing, which I'm saving for the second part of the show right now. We're just getting to know you, how you came to become Washington State Supreme Court Justice. Who else mentored you besides the Bishop Kane? Is that right? Did I pronounce his name right? And a former retired prosecutor, Norm Mailing. Who else helped you shape you professionally?
I would say Bobby Bridge, Justice Bobby Bridge, who's now retired. But Judge Bridge at the time was working in the juvenile courts. And she was someone who was so profoundly dedicated to advancing justice for juveniles. And I worked with her on truancy because we were trying to find a way to keep young people out of the system as much as we could. And we knew that if we kept kids in schools, that perhaps we could wrap services around those young people. Later, she became the presiding judge, and then I moved to the civil division of the prosecutor's office, and I ended up being the court's lawyer. So I had the chance to work with Justice Bridge very closely when she was the presiding judge in King County Superior Court. And she was one who shaped my view of what a judge could be, what a good lawyer should be, and how we can actually get engaged and be involved. So I would say Bobby Bridge was very important to me, and she still is today.
Thank you for sharing with us who helped and who shaped you, your judicial philosophy and all that. I actually will get into that now and ask you, because I was reading about the recently nominated, not yet confirmed, soon-to-be Justice Brown Jackson, and she said that she has a certain methodology in deciding cases, and now she is a well-respected jurist of a highest level. And I wonder if you have a methodology that you apply to deciding cases.
I don't know if it would be a methodology, but it certainly would be a practice. So my practice is always to read the record as deep as I can, to try to understand what did the trial court judge actually say and do. So it's not enough to read it in the briefs what the lawyers say, but I want to read what is it that the judge actually said in order to comprehend fully the record. And then second, I will also talk with my law clerks, which is very important. They're very bright. They're very smart in every single way. And so to have a conversation with them about the case. And then it's the same in every case, right? We have oral argument, And then in our court, right after oral argument, we actually discussed the case as justices for the first time. And so the most important thing, and I think that some judges don't stay with this, but I think the most important thing is to keep an open mind and an open heart and listen to your colleagues in terms of the things they might have to say about the case before we decide it. That would be my routine. That is how I like to approach every single case.
It is 2:15 p.m. You're on Rainier Avenue Radio, the Afternoons with Monique, new 1-hour show on every Thursday from here on out between 2 and 3 p.m. We have the pleasure of having Justice Mary Yu from the Washington State Supreme Court on our show today, and she is sharing with us her path to the Supreme Court Supreme Court, and soon she will run for re-election, unopposed at this point, I understand, but still she has done a substantial amount of work deciding cases over the past, I believe. You were appointed in 2014, am I right? So the last 8 years, you have decided many cases on the court. So let me ask you, what would be considered your proudest accomplishment on the court, or and I'll ask, and this is another one, is the significant cases that you feel impacted Washingtonians?
Yeah, let me first say is that every single case is really important, right? Because behind every case is a party, an individual, a family. And so every single case is really important. And yet I have to say that one of the opinions that I authored on behalf of the court is always going to be very special to me. And that is the bar application of Tara Simmons. Tara Simmons was a young woman who graduated from Seattle University School of Law. She had a criminal history, and she then wanted to take the bar exam, and the Bar Association said that she was not morally fit or didn't have the character to be a lawyer, and that not enough time had passed between her criminal acts and when she wanted to be a lawyer, so they were not going to let her sit for the bar. She appealed that to the Supreme Court, and our court unanimously said that criminal history should no longer be a categorical bar to anyone who wants to be a lawyer, right? Because people change, people are rehabilitated, people can make a difference in their own lives, and we should not hold it against them that they have a criminal history. So that was a unanimous decision, and it changed actually nationally the way that we look at bar applicants and the way that we examine who they are and whether they're fit to practice law. As you may know, Tara Simmons went on to be a legislator. So she is now a representative over on Kitsap County. And I think she's a very effective legislator and advocate for criminal justice reform. But I am most proud of that decision because we gave people a new opportunity to be lawyers. We really challenged the idea that your past should control your future. So that's one of my favorite.
Well, if I may clarify, ask a clarifying question in that regard, and thank you very much for sharing that about this case. So even if somebody had been convicted of a felony, or is there a line where the Supreme Court will not consider an applicant to be a member of the bar?
No, there is no longer a clear line. So Ms. Simmons had a felony history. And the reason why is, right, nobody is going to be defined by a given moment in their life. What we would care more about is not necessarily the act that occurred, but what happened after you were held accountable. What happened after you perhaps went to prison? What happened afterwards? What did you do with your life? Did you rehabilitate yourself? If you had a drug or alcohol problem, have you resolved that issue now? Are you clean and sober? Have you had a life without crime? So we're looking forward. We're trying to really measure the character of a person that goes beyond one given moment in time. And I think that's really important because all of us, right, every single day we grow, we change, we adapt, and you hope that we're not going to be cast into, our past and be stuck there forever.
And Is there any other decision that you felt had made a significant impact in the lives of our state residents?
Oh gosh, there's so many. Our court recently has been looking at the questions in regard to race. And so I'll mention one thing that really made a difference, and I'm very proud to have been the person who drafted the letter that our court issued in June of 2020. It was right after George Floyd was murdered, and our court was very troubled about what we could say or what we could do. And our court decided, at the suggestion of the Chief Justice, to write a letter, to say something, that we could not just be silent in the face of protests, in the face of such agony, not only in terms of the family, right, but the Black community was in utter despair. And so we issued this letter inviting every lawyer and every judge and every member of the legal community to reflect on how we might eradicate racism. Right. And I would say, Monique, we didn't realize what we set into action, because it has been tremendous the last 2 years, not only our court looking at some of these decisions, but judges across the state wrestling with how it is we might do our job better. How is it that we might change our practices in a way that addresses racism that's been embedded in what we do, with even us not knowing it or being consciously aware of it? So I'm very proud of that letter. I think, again, it set into motion a lot of good work.
If I would like to read that letter, where may I find it?
Oh, it's on our court's website. It is right on the front page. And if you're not able to locate it, I can send you the direct link right away.
That sounds great. And is there any decisions that were made during the time that you were on the bench, on the Supreme Court bench, that concern you?
That concern me?
Yeah.
Every case also needs to be implemented. And so I would say, we've made a lot of decisions in regard to jury selection. It was another opinion that I had written in Rebear. And we had said, that if a jury considers race in making a decision, that the judge should really make an inquiry and stop it. So what I worry about is that is very difficult to do at the trial court level. Our decisions can be somewhat academic, and so sometimes we don't often provide a roadmap of how is it that you do this, right? We provide directions, but we know it's a very delicate balance, and it's the trial judge who's burdened with, how do I do this without, somehow setting off a mistrial or doing something that I shouldn't do? So I worry about our decisions that sometimes are not very practical, and yet we have to articulate the principles of law, and they're not always going to be practical. So that might be a worry that I have, is how easy is it to implement the law that we are creating?
I was going to save this question for the second part, but since we are talking about the relationship between the executive branch and the legislators, some people have said that the U.S. Supreme Court wield too much power, like they play such a role that some feel that it's maybe even abuse of discretion when they have so much power over matters that, and I of course what I'm heading to here with Roe v. Wade, and the recent conservative bend that the U.S. Supreme Court currently are holding. So without getting into Roe v. Wade just yet, do you feel that our U.S. Supreme Court, or the court in Washington State, let's see, how is that different? And of course, I have my own opinions, but I would love to hear your opinion about how it differs from the appointed, but elected for but a lifetime appointment that the U.S. Supreme Court get to have. How does that change the dynamic of power and direction of those of the U.S. versus the Washington State Court?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure that it really does change. If the United States Supreme Court had issued a decision that everybody loved, people would be hailing and celebrating. For example, when they first decided same-sex marriage, right? People just celebrated and thought that the court was the greatest branch. People disagree with this particular opinion, and people now are ready to dismantle the court. And so I don't think that the court is grabbing power. The court, right, the judicial branch is an equal branch of government, equal to Congress, equal to the president, and they all keep each other in check. There had been some commentary that says, the Supreme Court is stepping in because there's a void of leadership in Congress or in the executive branch. I can't say because I don't know, right? I mean, those are real politics at play, but I would say the court is addressing cases that come before it. And while we may not agree or we do agree with the outcome, the fact is they are doing their job. They are deciding the cases. They are deciding it based on principles of law that they have articulated and that they put into play. It's unfortunate in many ways that people are seeing themselves out of sync with what the court is saying, and it causes, right, public trust and confidence to fade away. The fact that there was a leaked opinion is very problematic in terms of people began to wonder, is this court political or not? The question of whether it's political is a different one than whether or not it actually has too much power. I don't think it has too much power. The question of whether it's political, that's a fair question. It really is, because so many of these justices were asked directly by members of Congress during the confirmation hearings where they might be on this. And so many of them said that they would defend precedent and they could not see any of the law changing. I don't know what happened in the background. I don't know what happened in the conversations, but I don't think that they were outside of their power in deciding the case. Again, it's a little different, right, in terms of where the outcome is. What is different, and I appreciate Washington State more than anything else, is that we are elected, and being elected makes us accountable to the people at a different level, right? I love having to go out and talk to the community. I love taking time to go to the rotaries or go to the legislative districts and have them ask me questions. I think it's really good to be accountable. And when you're appointed for life, you're not accountable to anybody but yourself.
That's right. We have 2 minutes until the break, and I wonder if Dan would like to. Yes, he is alerted us that we are going to take a break now, and when we come back, I will continue to ask Justice Yu about some cases and some opinions that she may have when running for re-election this coming up term. You on Rainier Avenue Radio. I'm Monique Lee, host of the new Afternoons with Monique, 1 hour episode every Thursday from 2 to 3. Going on break, and we'll be back in 2 minutes.
I'm Paul Pearson, host of Star Time, and when I'm not rehearsing my annual address to shareholders, I'm listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
Do you feel uneasy on your feet? Need assistance to walk? Do you use a wheelchair and want to stand more? What if you could stand stronger, feel steadier on your feet? What would this mean for your daily life? Join our dance-based walking program to improve balance, coordination, strength, and stamina. Wednesdays in July and August at 2 p.m. at the iconic Columbia City Theater in partnership with Rainier Avenue Radio and Hugs and Power Nonprofit. Walkers, wheelchairs, and canes welcome. If you can stand and bear weight for even just 5 seconds, come dance to walk with Tango Stride.
Rainier Avenue Radio presents All Music, All Day Saturday. Music, All Day Saturday. This is Edwin Bailey, Bulldog Blue, Jazz from the Cabinets.
That's right. It's time once again for Jazz from the Cabinets with Big Poppy.
Star Time.
Thanks for tuning in. My name is Paul Pearson.
This is Star Time. Saturdays, all music, all day. Reggae Hour, K-Fox Night.
Looking for the perfect beat? Yeah, it's the beat of the Fox.
Fresh Juice, D-Money in the crew.
Myself, D-Money. Pint-Size Patron.
Taylor
There's
Hart.
a Spencia, the Northwest Rap Gang.
DJ Medina. Chad Cheddar. Northwest Rap Gang.
Sergio LaCour's Love Line.
It's Sergio's Love Lines with Sergio LaCour. Go to the phone lines. Hello.
Sea Monster Radio. Mo Jams is your jam.
We're live. Welcome to Mojo Mondays. This is KZ of KZ Music Media. Caller Goddess for Mojo Mondays.
Just my opinion. God is inspiration. All day and all night. Saturdays on Rainier Avenue Radio App.
Different rules apply when it gets this late. You know what I mean? It's like after hours.
Whatever gets you through the night. It's all right.
Hello, I'm an unpaid spokesman for DJ Sotovaci. I'd like to invite you to listen to his free-form music show. It's popular music the way it was never intended to be heard. Whatever gets you through the night, late nights, here on RainierAvenueRadio.world.
Whatever gets you through the night.
Điều kỳ diệu nào đó sẽ xảy ra khi bạn thắt dây an toàn. Đó là điều kỳ diệu khi chúng ta đặt điện thoại của mình ngoài tầm với, hoặc cung cấp thêm chỗ cho ai đó trên xe đạp của họ. Một hành động nhỏ dừng lại để ai đó băng qua đường. Đó là một vẻ đẹp. Ngay cả việc bắt xe về nhà sau khi uống rượu cũng rất anh hùng. Bởi vì tất cả những điều nhỏ nhặt đó đóng vai trò to lớn cho việc giữ an toàn cho chúng ta. Cùng nhau, chúng ta đến đó.
You're listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.world. Check us out on social media. Facebook and Instagram, Rainier Avenue Radio.world, and on Twitter at Rainier Av Radio.
Welcome to Rainier Avenue Radio. This is Afternoons with Monique, recording live in Seattle, Washington, every Thursday at 1 p.m.
And you're back. This is Monique from the Afternoons with Monique show on Rainier Avenue Radio. Today, I am having the pleasure and the honor of having our Supreme Court Justice, Mary Yu, coming on Afternoons with Monique. And for those of you who are just joining us, let me read the list of accomplishments Justice Yu had achieved over the course of her career. She had received numerous awards and accolades in the past 30 to 35 years in service. She is awarded in 2022 the Lauren Miller Bar Association Lifetime Achievement Award, 2022 Q Law Bar Association President's Award, 2021 Seattle University School of Law established the Justice Mary I. Yu Endowed Scholarship, 2020 Latino Bar Association of Washington C.Z. Smith Trailblazer Award, 2019 Established Leader Pride Award, and from Mayor Jenny Durkin, City of Seattle, 2018 Voice of Social Justice from the Greater Seattle Business Association, 2017 Lifetime Achievement Award from Northwest Asian Weekly, 2016 the Daniel K. Inouye Trailblazer Award from the National Asian Pacific American Bar Association, and the list just go on and on because she had done so much in her career as our jurist in Washington State. Please welcome back to Afternoons with Monique, Justice Mary Yu.
Thank you, Monique. And I, I just have to say, I feel really privileged to be in this position and truly honored to be serving the people in the state of Washington. I just feel so lucky.
Well, you have done so much in your judicial career. I mean, if I had to read the entire list of all the accomplishments and all the awards that you have received, it would make people like, why is she reading so many things? There's just too much here. So I will leave you folks to do your own due diligence. If you want to get to know Justice Mary Yu, you just have to Google, and her accomplishment and biography is on the web. Please take a look. She is a well-qualified jurist, and she's running for re-election coming up for this term 2022. Let me come back and ask you some questions that some of the attorneys have sent to me to ask you about issues that concern them or things that they're curious how you would respond. Okay, so one here is, the United States Supreme Court has taken a substantial shift to the right on a number of issues, including Second Amendment gun rights, religious free exercise rights, abortion, and regulation of greenhouse gases. How does this affect the Washington Supreme Court decisions and the rights in our state constitution?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's really important for your listeners to understand, right, that there are sort of parallel tracks, right? We have the federal government, the federal constitution, and we have federal courts. And as a parallel, we have state courts and state constitutions and state Supreme Courts. We, not the United States Supreme Court, our state Supreme Court is the only one with the authority to interpret our own state constitution. So when I look at this, yes, perhaps the United States Supreme Court has shifted in a particular political direction, but our court doesn't need to follow them when we interpret our own state constitution. I believe that our court will continue on the same path, interpreting in the same manner and the same way that we have done thus far. We have a different constitution than the federal government. We have a very strong Second Amendment. In fact, very different than what the federal constitution has. We have a very strong privacy interest protected in our state constitution that doesn't exist at the federal level. So I really believe that as much as when we have to look at federal law, we must follow the Supreme Court. But overall, generally, we are interpreting our own state law and our own state constitution. We are looking at statutes that have been created by our own legislature, not by Congress. So it's very different. And I would hope that people should be concerned nationally, but they should not be so concerned statewide. I'm hoping that our court will continue the same path on the same track that we have been walking on for the last 50 years or so.
So in the same vein, this question is a little bit more specific. Considering the Dobbs decision, which reversed Roe v. Wade, is that going to change the law regarding abortion rights and access in Washington? Could you please explain?
Sure. I don't think it will. And the only reason why is because I have heard our executive, right, the governor, I have heard our legislature indicate that they will do all that they can to continue to fortify those rights in the state of Washington. Already in the state of Washington, the law in the statutory provisions includes the right to abortion under the right to health care. So I don't think that the loss of that right at a national level will really touch upon those rights in the state of Washington. Now, of course, that can change because the legislature has the authority to do so. The governor has indicated that he, again, will be taking other steps to really ensure that people have access to full health care. So I don't think it's really going to affect those in Washington. The greater concern has to do with others from other states coming to Washington state and whether or not they can afford to come here and whether or not they are entitled to the same rights as Washington citizens have. That will be another question and another debate.
That is coming up for you to consider. Very good. Another attorney wants to know, the court also is accepting very few cases, and now you have to educate me how many is considered a lot and how many is average in the Supreme Court here, and how many cases are being considered for review right now, and how many have been granted. Can you give us a context of how many cases the 9 justices typically take on and the grant review per year on average, and what about recently?
Yeah, I can't give you the statistic of recent. I do have it. I just don't have it at my fingertips, and I apologize. I should have brought that with me. We, on the average, will issue between probably 80 and 125 opinions a year. And the one thing that's really important for everybody to understand is, as much as we want to get those out as quickly as we can, there's a level of respect by the fact that we want every justice who's authoring an opinion to take their time, to be thoughtful, to circulate it to the other 9 for their input, to make adjustments, to make changes, and do everything that they can. So being deliberate and being purposeful in what we write is really a very important value rather than turning it around very fast. In terms of the number of cases that we accept, it often depends on what people bring to us. Because we are a discretionary court, we get to pick which cases we want to hear. And sometimes some of the cases, we might have 15 cases, for example, that come on the same topic. Well, we're not going to take all the 15 cases, right? We're going to take one of those cases that will establish the law that might affect the other 15. So we'll review the facts. We'll look at which case is the best that's been briefed, where the lawyers are ready and prepared to come with oral argument. And we might select the one and put the other ones into a holding pattern until we're finished. So most people would say, well, you're only taking one, and why not the 16? Well, because they're all the same point of law, that's why. I would say that we have some fewer cases in the civil arena than we used to have, and it probably is because many of those cases are now settling, right? People recognize the cost to go to trial, the cost of litigation is very high. So some people will settle their case, which then really cuts off the right to appeal. There isn't a case to appeal anymore, and that affects what comes to us. I can tell you once a month, we still have voluminous cases that we are reviewing. We look at every case that comes before us in terms of asking to be heard. Sometimes it comes from a federal court when they are asking us to answer a state law question. Sometimes it comes from people in prison who are saying I was wrongfully convicted. Some are coming from trial courts all around the state. So each month, we're looking at 60 to 70 cases to try to decide which ones we will take. I hope that people would not interpret the fact that we have 125 opinions a year as the fact that we're not working hard enough or that we're not taking more cases. I think it's a good pace. I feel overworked and overwhelmed most of the time because we're trying to be very deliberate about each case and to be thoughtful. And it's voluminous reading on each one. The one thing our court has done in the last few years is we welcome amicus briefs, right? These are briefs that are filed by people. It could be organizations, schools, entities who are filing briefs because they want to be heard, not because they're a party, but they're a friend of the court. They're asking us to consider the policy decision. And I think that's wonderful that we invite those, we welcome it. But what it does, right, is it makes the workload even larger in terms of the number of briefs we have to read. But I would not say that we have reduced the workload or the number of cases.
For those of you who are unfamiliar, amicus curiae is a brief that is prepared, like Justice Ameriu just said, by friends of the court, organization that support a cause that accompany to the appellant's main arguments to support their arguments. Okay, so next question from another attorney. In the 2018 State Supreme Court death penalty decision, can you comment on that?
Yes, State v. Gregory was a very, very important case. And I'll just have to say that, the other branches of government had the opportunity to strike the death penalty and never did it. I know that the executive put a stay on executions, but the legislature did not do that. And so there was a case that came up to us. And our court generally, right, doesn't feel that we step into the role of the legislature. We don't do that. We don't substitute our judgment for theirs. But the case that came up was not about the moral aspects of the death penalty per se. What they argued is that the death penalty, when it is applied, is discriminatory towards Black men, that it is applied to them in a disproportionate manner. Right now, we don't have a political issue. We have a constitutional issue. We have an issue that has to do with equal protection, right? That everybody should be treated equally. We struck down the death penalty because the lawyers in that case brought forth enough evidence to demonstrate that across the state, this was being applied disproportionately to Black men. And again, that's a violation of the Constitution. So it went on for a long time because the lawyers provided a lot of briefing, a lot of evidence. We allowed the prosecutors to test the evidence and to challenge it. At the end of the day, under the leadership of Justice Fairhurst, this court ended up deciding that it had to be struck for those reasons. It was a seminal case, but I just want to assure everybody it was not born out of politics, right, or personal viewpoints. It really was trying to protect the constitutional rights of all people.
Another question just came in is there is talk about enlarging the U.S. Supreme Court. Would Justice Yu support increasing the size of the state Supreme Court?
Gosh, you know, if I offered an opinion on it, it would be out of complete ignorance. And that is, I know how difficult it is to work with 8 other people. When the court meets, there are 9 of us, and we are tethered to one another in every single way. We hear the case together, and to try to decide a case together is a challenge. I have to say, I really have not put enough reading and study into whether or not the court ought to be enlarged or perhaps even made smaller. I have to say, it would be offering an opinion based on ignorance because I can't say. I just don't know. I know that it's hard to work with 9. It would surely be harder to work with 12.
We are at 2:47 p.m. and we have about 10 minutes left to ask you some additional question about your re-election coming up. Well, before we get to that, one probably a quick answer here. What is Justice Yu's response to the criticism among some that the Washington Supreme Court veers too left and is not the best representation of the state?
Yeah, and you know, I would expect that people would say something like that. I can really say for sure, and I would want people to know, is that we are not making decisions based on political perspectives, but some people might see that the court is moving so-called left when we are committed to addressing racism. Racism is not a left or a right issue, right? I mean, it really is about treating everybody the same in a system of justice as much as we can. But I've heard the criticism, you know, the Blake decision was a recent one. The Blake decision was one where we struck down the statute that allowed for the prosecution of drug possession. We didn't do that to say you cannot enforce drug laws. What we said is that the state has a duty to show, like all other crimes, the state of mind, that the person intended to possess the drugs. That's all we did, is join the rest of the country in requiring a so-called mens rea, a state of mind in proving a criminal act. But I have read and I have heard and I have had people say things to me that indicate they don't understand the decision and they have not read it because they are saying this is just another political agenda. You don't want to prosecute drug cases. That's not true. People can criticize us. I welcome the criticism. I think it's okay. It's fair game. But I would say we are not left or right oriented. We are really attempting to do everything we can to make sure that the burden of proof is allocated to the state, but that people of color are treated fairly in the system of justice. And when you look at the numbers and the statistics, it should be troubling to everyone that something is wrong that we need to correct. And our court is going to do that regardless of the criticism.
In looking at the makeup of the U.S. Supreme Court in the past versus present, people are saying that it seemed to, in the past, the U.S. Supreme Court and even the Washington State Supreme Court seemed to be made up of elite individuals. But recently, things have been shifted with the recent appointments of soon-to-be Justice Brown Jackson, and also in our state, when studying the background of the justices, we see a lot of middle class Supreme Court justice that came from middle class background. So my question for you is, does a collegial court a good thing, diversity of thought? So the Washington State Supreme Court is considered to be one of the most diverse courts in the United States. But at the same time, it does seem to have a very, very friendly group of justices working together. Case in point, during quarantine, Justice Gonzalez cut your hair during the time when barbers and restaurants were forbidden from opening their door. Can you tell us about your friendship with Chief Justice Gonzalez?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's really important yes, I would agree that our court is the most diverse in the nation in terms of our backgrounds by race, by ethnicity, and the things that we have done. I have to say that our court, though, when you look at everyone, every single person, including Justice Johnson and Justice Mattson, they all came from really working class backgrounds in terms of self-made people. There's no one on our court who came from wealth. Every single individual is self-made, and that's extraordinary, right? So that you don't have individuals who don't really understand what it might be like to struggle and to really work hard to get yourself to a place in the world. In terms of my friendship with Chief Justice Gonzalez, I have to say I feel so blessed, Monique, to have him as a friend. And it doesn't mean that we agree on everything and we don't agree on cases all of the time. But, you know, I sat with Justice Gonzalez as a trial court judge as well for 7 years. Our offices were right next to each other when we were at the King County Superior Court. And it was wonderful when I came to the Supreme Court that our offices were next to each other. I trust him like a brother, and yet at the same time, like a good family, right? You don't always agree.
Right.
But we have respect for each other.
Justice Gonzalez was the first justice that was on Afternoons with Monique. And this last question before I give you the closing statements to share with our audience about your re-election campaign would be, how would you, if re-elected, increase access to justice above and beyond what is currently being done that will further the interests of our less than fortunate, perhaps the people that has less access to justice, the people without the money, the financial resources to see their cases through? How would you help them?
Yeah, thank you for that question, because I am convinced that one way that we can increase access is to really reduce or do away with filing fees. It costs so much to come into court, and it should not. How many other branches of government require people to pay before they get the government service? No one. And I think that that should not be true with us, as people should be able to access our courts without having to pay in the first instance, which means that the legislature needs to subsidize us at a greater level. So that's one. Second, I think that we've learned a lot during COVID. The court came to the people. There were different ways that we used, right? Remote testimony. We allowed people to actually appear in court without having to come to the courthouse, without having to take time off of work. Those are new innovations that we have to adopt and make part of our practices. And I think our judges want to do that. Our judges have discovered how we might make everything a little easier. And then finally, the rules. Like, the rules sometimes get in the way of people doing what they need to do. And I think we should simplify the rules and make it easier for people to handle some of their own matters. There are some cases that you need a lawyer because it's a very complicated question. But there are other cases where you don't need a lawyer, and perhaps you can do this by yourself if we made it simpler and easier and were more accessible. So those would be quick 3 little ways that I think I know I'm committed to trying to bring about, and I know our court is as well.
There's always going to be some kind of injustice or unfairness going on in the world, as we are human, and we don't always know. I mean, of course, judges are entrusted to have a broader perspective, a wider body of knowledge and legal legal training, but at the same time, the residents of our state at times will have disagreements and come to court, and many of them will not have, one of them may have the financial resources and the other one doesn't. And so yeah, this proposal that you have to help the residents of Washington State is very important. What else would you consider doing? I mean, legislators need to step in and help for sure. But in your role as a judicial officer and being the head of some of the committees, how would you propose to help the imbalance of power in certain cases out there that come in front of you?
There's no question that at some point, the ability to appoint lawyers in all cases will be important, right? The civil Gideon, that people should always have a lawyer. I know that we have a great bar that tries to do as much pro bono work as they can, but at some point we have to say, right, are all the cases important enough that there should be the right to counsel in every single matter? And I think that, yes, the answer is clearly yes. We're doing a lot of work with our interpreter commission as well to ensure that there are actually live interpreters as much as possible, because it's more than translation on the telephone, right? Professional interpreters will tell you how important it is to be face-to-face with an individual to make sure that they understand not only, right, what is being said one way, but both ways in terms of the ability to communicate. Now, we know not every county in the state of Washington has live person interpreters, but we're trying to do the best that we can to provide quality interpretation in every single matter, no matter how small or no matter how large. And I know our commission is working hard to make that a reality. You know, there's a host of other issues. I would say it's not only fines and fees and sanctions and access to counsel. There's a variety of ways that we can make sure that we're increasing access for every single person. We should do better, we can do better, and I think you have a court that's committed to doing so.
Well, we have about 30 seconds to 1 minute left to close our show. Would you have any parting thought to our audience?
Yeah, I would just say, you know, I am running uncontested, which means I'm on the ballot alone. And while it may seem like it's a wasted vote, I can assure you that it's not. I would vote all the way down the ballot for all of the judges that are up for election. Do some research, ask lawyers, but vote. Don't stop just because you only see one name. Do the research, and if you can't find yourself supporting the individual, then don't vote. But more importantly, don't stop because you don't know enough about judges. So I would be delighted at any point to provide additional information about who I am and what I'm doing. I have a campaign website that's very simple. It's just justicemarryyou.com. And there you can find out more about me and watch a video about my life.
Well, there you have it, folks. Justice Mary Yu from the Washington State Supreme Court. Thank you so much for being on my show, Justice Yu.
Thank you, Monique.
Have a good afternoon, everyone. Don't forget to tune in next week at 2 p.m. on Thursday, every Thursday from here on out, for another episode of Afternoons with Monique. You're on Rainier Avenue Radio, signing